An unconventional economic theory is gaining some traction thanks to the policy teams of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. It's called modern monetary theory, MMT. Now, stay with me for this one. MMT suggests that governments don't have to worry about debt because they print their own money. If we need to spend more money on government programs, we print more. But too much money in the economy could result in inflation. MMT suggests that we use taxes as a relief valve, pull money out of the economy before it overheats from having too much money in there. Supporters of the theory say the government should stop trying to balance the budget, period. They go so far as to say that policies aimed at balancing a budget hurt the economy by forcing cuts to programs. In fact, they think a budget surplus should be avoided at all costs. A government holding on to money instead of funneling it into the economy is more harmful than piling on debt in the long run. This is a very different approach than the pay-as-you-go proposals from Democrats or the massive program cuts suggested by Republicans over the last few decades, and it's a total departure from mainstream economic theories, one that hasn't been discussed a whole lot until now. Policy proposals from the progressive left, like Medicare for All or from Bernie Sanders or the Green New Deal from Ocasio-Cortez, often raise the question of how we are going to end up paying for it. One of the answers is we can just print more money. Joining us to talk more about this is the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors for President Obama, Austan Goolsbee. Austan, that's a hard one to lay out. I've tried as best as I can. What's your thinking on modern monetary theory and its place in the way we approach budgets and debt and programs?
Well, I thought you did a good job summarizing their views. I guess I'd say, as it applies to our politics, I kind of agree that in a world where each time the Republicans take over, they completely disregard that tax cuts need to be paid for and they run the deficit up, that it's unrealistic and unfair to say to Democrats, oh, well, if you want to do something important for the country, you have to pay for every cent. We can't increase the deficit.
Help me
now, that said, the MMT as a theory, as an economic theory, is confused. It's kind of a mismatch of things that don't really make sense or else are completely obvious. So I wish they would spend less time talking about theory and more time just talking about what's reasonable.
That's a lot for an economist to say that. Okay, help me understand this then, because Bill Gates recently took exception with MMT, calling it crazy talk. But at the same time, he conceded that you can raise debt to 150% of GDP before you reach a problem point. Is he right?
Look, I think the argument that the U.S. has a higher debt capacity than our current debt level, nobody's going to argue with that. Yes, we can't. That's why the markets don't freak out as the deficit has gotten bigger. The problem of deficits, of course, is that you have to pay back the money, and it crowds out other priorities that we have rising debt. We're going to have to pay the interest.
Because there is interest. It's not free.
Yeah, it's not free. That said, we can't afford it. And the part of it's not really about MMT. MMT as a theory is confused. The argument that the U.S. can't afford to run deficits, especially if it's for investing in things that are going to have a future payoff, you know that we can do that because we've been doing it for things that aren't even investments. We have now, for the last two Republican presidents, had massive increases in the deficit for tax cuts to high-income people. So we can afford to do that.
Right. We've decided that's okay for
But
you.
here's an issue. I'm thoroughly confused, and Austan seems to be, yes, we're all confused, so let's move on. I'm thoroughly confused about MMT. Yet we have seen a whole bunch of Democrats already, those who are in the 2020 races, sort of eyeing this, or at least getting themselves closer to an economist named Stephanie Kelton. She helped popularize MMT. If that's where Democrats are going, is this thing going to be a bigger talking point as we head into the primary race?
I don't know. Look, it might be, but I mean, truly, it's confused. Their argument, there's one part that's obvious and there's one part that's confused. The part that's obvious is, yes, if you run up debt in your own currency, you could print money to pay it back. That would, as Ali said, lead to significant inflation. That's monetizing the debt. And then their second conclusion is, well, we can prevent the inflation by raising taxes. But if you raise the taxes, you eliminate the deficit. We know that you could afford more government spending in the long run if you had a lot more tax revenue. The question has always been, well, how much more tax revenue do we want to have? So that's why I think the theory is a little bit muddled. But the basic point, if their basic point is, why should we have to never increase the deficit to make investments when the Republicans repeatedly run up the deficit to cut taxes for high-income people?
And the math
that makes
on that's
perfect
not hard,
sense.
right?
That's totally reasonable.
If you're investing in things that will offer you a greater economic return over the long term than you're paying in interest, then that can be a reasonable transaction.
Yes, correct.
Right? If we're building
exactly
infrastructure.
Right. Exactly right.
The issue is we've sort of lost sight of thinking about that.
If that's what they're saying, they are correct on that.
All right. Austin, thank you for working through this with us. This one's a little tricky. Austin
Great to see you
Goolsbee
guys again.
is a former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
My goodness. I mean, I do wonder, do people remember what helped President Trump get elected were three-word slogans? And we can't even get ourselves through
MMT's
MMT.
a hard one. Yeah. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.